Now, when I entered my first fighting game tournament, I believed myself to be, at the very least, competent enough to make it 4 rounds in, you know. I'll just do my best and leave satisfied. Being the naturally talented brainlet I am, I won! Not. About 4 minutes after the tournament had started, I had lost my first round without even winning a single point, and proceeded to lose my next one in the loser's bracket, disqualifying me. As I sat back and took a couple of ragged breaths, I began to realize that the mountain that I had been climbing in my quest to become good had just been, in fact, a hill, and that beyond it lay a countless amount of mountains left to explore and survive. As I sat on that hilltop, it was quiet, with the only thing permeating through the air being the realization that I was bad. Like, really bad. And so, I found myself at a familiar crossroad. Dig my heels in and continue, or go home. My entire life had been filled with people who stayed within the boundaries of their natural talents, and parents who told me that I was going to become a computer scientist. And so, for the first time, I'd be actively venturing out into the unknown. As I started my first steps up that mountain, experimenting and failing countless times, I began to realize that failure and anger is the key to living a purposeful life. So today I want to talk about how I trained to become comfortable with discomfort, initially using 3 rules. 1, check your ego. 2, remove your options. And 3, never stop tryharding. As I sat on that hilltop, looking out into this mountainous range of stuff I couldn't even begin to comprehend and execute, I began to realize that I needed to change the way in which I thought. I began telling myself, actually, you do suck. What did you expect? You would play for 3 months and become one of the big boys? You are nothing compared to some of the people here, and no one gives a damn but you. I forced myself to watch replays of my previous matches and began to see how selective my memory had been. I remembered the win streaks against the newcomers to the game and forgot the loss streaks against the veterans. As much as I didn't want to admit it, I was afraid of being told that I was bad above anything else. And to say that I'm alone in this fear would be incorrect as well. Fear of .NET lists the fear of public speaking and of failure as among the top 10 highest phobias. But, as it turns out, being an immature brainlet actually helped me. I let shame and rage naturally wash out my fear, and I beat myself up. I hated myself, and let that fuel my growth. I began forcing myself to challenge everyone I met, and when I lost, I chose to be angry. I let every mistake I made get beaten into my fingers, and every win became a confirmation of their power. I put my rage above my personal vulnerability, and in that, I was unconsciously growing a negative growth mindset. This negative growth mindset gave me the fuel to continue climbing. Of course, as time went on and my anger wore off, I grew confident in my ability again, this time accepting that I would never be perfect. I am nothing. Therefore, I can be anything. As I slowly began to encapsulate this mindset, I realized that winners pursued loss and losers idolized wins. Like fighting game pro Daigo Umehara, I had come to realize that wins and losses are merely markers in our own stories of personal development. So while I recommend you start with anger and shame, anger fueling success is never sustainable and will always end up with you on top, unsatisfied, and alone. To find joy and meaning in our exploits is to carefully balance our ego and our desire to grow. So rule number 1, check your ego. Around the same time that I'd gone into my fighting game, I'd also gone into running as well, and I'd hit a block. I needed more reason to start running consistently. Unlike fighting games, running was mostly a solo climb, with you only climbing against the mountain itself. This is where rule number 2 comes in. Remove your options. There is a 1974 Stanford experiment in which scientists left children alone in a room with a marshmallow, telling them that if they didn't eat it for 15 minutes, they would get another one. The children who succeeded were shown to be much more successful in terms of happiness and achievement later in life, but they weren't just using their willpower, or in my case, anger, for that delayed gratification. Out of all the children who succeeded, a vast majority decided to sing songs, dance, talk to themselves, or even hide their eyes. They chose to remove eating the marshmallow as an option altogether. A light bulb went off in my head. Was willpower a finite source? Yes. Did I have a lot of it? No. And so I joined a running club with some friends. I ran for charity. I had my friends take away my computer and I downloaded a self-control app on my phone. I used social pressures to remove my opportunities to flake out and had all the things I used to relax locked away, saving my anger for running that extra kilometer. More importantly, I had found a way to remove my opportunities to be sad. By filling in the in-betweens of my life with work and practice, I was able to circumvent my ability to be sad. I had no time to worry about how people viewed me because, oh crap, I need to start running 4 kilometers in the next 2 minutes. Use your sadness to propel your anger. God damn it. Why did I say that to him? Ah! This is probably one of the hardest things to get past, at least for me, when it comes to climbing new mountains. In a world where social media and distractions permeate through the very air we breathe and our identities are reduced down to our physical and innate natures, I believe that simplifying our lives into opportunities clears the path for growth. It allows us to focus on that one idea. I want to do this, and so I will. That is rule number 2. Remove your options. Finally, rule number 3, never stop tryharding. Now, for those of you who don't play video games, a tryhard has a simple definition. Someone who tries hard at something. They don't relax, they don't calm down, and they don't even look like they're having fun. And so on the outside, people tend to characterize them as no-lives. And to me, originally, being the smooth-brained couch potato I was, related to that sentiment. But on closer inspection of the common tryhard and my eventual assimilation into the role, I've come to realize that it is actually they who extract the most satisfaction and joy through their respective passions through a simple idea known as flow. The state of flow, or being in the zone, is a state of complete absorption in one's task as a result of perceived skill peaking at perceived difficulty. It's when your pupils dilate, your brain is completely stimulated, your movements are instinctual yet also calculated, and your sense of time melts away. By constantly trying hard and pushing themselves, the tryhard is in constant pursuit of flow. No excuses, no breaks, never satisfied. It is in the state of flow in which we grow most efficiently. They have no clue as to the concept of the relativity of hills versus mountains because they get angry anyways. Now you may ask why the tryhard, being as hated as they are by society, continue to try hard. It is because of one thing, and one thing only. They care. Their faces grow red, they scream obscenities, and they break their controllers, and yes, it is childish, but it shows that they care. And caring is the most fundamental part of flow. You can't enter flow if you're doing something you don't care about or were peer pressure to do. You can't enter flow if at the slightest bit of pushback you quit. It's all about satiating your intrinsic desires, whether that be video games, video editing, sports, or whatever. I began to play angrily, and I expressed it when I felt it. Hours spent doing mundane tasks were now filled with furious visualization as I relived embarrassments and tried to find solutions, unconsciously training my brain to react a little faster, a little more accurately. In a world where peer pressure and ostracism have grown exponentially as a result of the internet, I have come to deeply respect those who are brave enough to get angry and keep at it, regardless of if they succeed or fail. It is with these ideas in mind that I've come to attempt to inherit the best traits of the tryhard, their unbridled passion in the pursuit of flow and the depth of those authoring their future, while leaving behind their angry outbursts and potential burnout, saving that spark for the beginning of learning. It doesn't matter if you're great. It doesn't matter if you suck. What matters is that you care. That is rule number 3. Never stop tryharding. Using these 3 rules, I found success and drive in the things that I wanted to accomplish. I started running every other day, and the next fighting game tournament I joined, I placed second. I recently started getting into competitive dance games, and I went from this, looking basically like a penguin on thin ice, to this in about a month. But more importantly, I had inadvertently opened my horizons to so many different outlets in which I could live. In my pursuit of competency and greatness, I had unlocked an openness that I never had before. I can be wrong, and I can always be better. My entire life, I lived in fear of my parents, the very people who I believe never validated me. And just last week, I initiated a conversation with them about the nature of our relationship. I accepted my mistakes and took their concern in anger. It slowly morphed into a more sustainable mindset, with me climbing those mountains not because of the voices coming from its base, but from the joy in climbing a little higher. Not negative, not positive, just down the middle. Being bad was just life, and so I stopped being so afraid. So I fell off some mountains I didn't care about. I engaged in public speaking to stand up to ideas I disagreed with, and began to realize that people worth engaging don't make fun of you for being new, but respect you for trying. On a larger scale, I believe that this idea is something that is extremely prevalent today, with our realization that in our comfort we have been complicit in racism, inequality, in violence. But I'll put my 2 cents in on the matter as a form of exercise. And if you disagree with me, you can come to me after the talk and change my mind. This new era of internet activism seems cheap. And the fact that I've seen people say things like, if you know a homophobe, direct message me and I'll beat the crap out of them, is so alarmingly hypocritical in its intention and effect that it scares me. Of course, acts of sexism have been so overwhelming in their large and small scale effects that anger is completely understandable. But if there's anything I've learned from my self-experimentation, it's that not everybody absorbs anger in the same way. If I'm angry, I direct it at myself and turn it into something productive. If I'm angry at someone else and I just shove that onto them, who knows how they'll handle that anger? By saying things like that, you're adding fuel to the fire and leaving all productivity, in this case, understanding and changing one's mind, to ash. Direct your anger and fight the system, not its people. There must be a better way. As said by Obama on the topic of cancel culture, that's not activism. That's not bringing about change. If all you're doing is casting stones, then you're probably not going to get that far, because that's easy to do. Cancel culture feeds off our fragility and fear of the unknown. And I believe that we need to start accepting, start listening, and start using the trauma and hate that surrounds us on a daily basis to fight back productively. The joy of activism is not necessarily being right, but the journey of becoming better, more critical, and more vulnerable. Looking back, I realize now that anger is just the shield we use to hide our fear and shame, and that if we keep using it to develop as people, it'll eventually break. So it's okay to cry. It's okay to be awkward or to ask for help. We just need to find our footing, grit our teeth, and push beyond our tears. Anger is a start, but never the end. It'll get us into space, but it won't necessarily put us on the moon. Using the discipline that I had gained from this process, I began appreciating my opportunities to fail rather than get angry at them. I didn't need that spark anymore. As a part of the new generation, I feel as if we are always two extremes, too closed and afraid when we are left alone, and violently outspoken when we are in groups. We stick to toxicity if it keeps us climbing together, and accept insecurity if it keeps us from climbing alone. And if we ever want to see a future in which humanity can thrive truly and fully, I believe that we need to start by asking ourselves and the people around us difficult questions. Whether that be about our skills, our loneliness, our social expectations, or our excuses. And to say that I've fully come to terms with being comfortable with discomfort would be an understatement. But I would never give away the months of pain and suffering I put myself through to reach the me now. This is who I am now and who I was later. And this is what I got. I refuse to believe that our reality is static. This speech in itself is the first step for me to become someone that I can look up to. And I can guarantee for a fact that looking back on it, relative to me before and me after it, that I'll be proud. I realize now that it is in the pursuit of perfection do we become the greatest versions of ourselves. It's in putting in that extra time to perfect a combo. It's in running that extra kilometer. It's in standing up and fighting for what you believe to be true. It's about getting bored with the things you love and sticking with it. And you want to know a secret? Being the best you can be is in its own way perfection. And it all starts with those mountains. It all starts with I want this. It all starts with keeping that flicker of desire alive. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.